What's up, guys, and welcome back to Moaning. If you guys are new here, then what's up? My name's Erica. Heya, how you doing? For today's video, today's video is a long time coming because today I am chatting with a good friend of mine, the mastermind behind the beautiful brand that is PLATO'S Fire. So you guys may have seen PLATO'S Fire on Instagram or Twitter, or maybe just people like Jennifer Saint wearing Natasha's beautiful jewellery. It is a jewellery brand that is inspired by the ancient world and that recreates the designs from pottery, little details from frescoes, and even little temple details into this gorgeous, intricately laser-cut jewellery. So today, Natasha, we're going to be talking about everything behind the branding, about you, about everything else that you do on the side, because I don't think that people realize there's so much other stuff that PLATO'S Fire and that you offer regarding classics to a wider audience. But before we get into all of that, why don't we start with you? So the way that I start all these interviews is by asking my guests about their classics background. And you studied at St. Andrews in Scotland. But prior to getting your degree, when did you discover classics? When did that whole love start? And can you take us on that journey with you?
It's kind of a long story, a bit of a roundabout way. So I grew up in Shropshire and spent a very wholesome childhood with my grandparents a lot. We went to all the National Trust properties and English heritage and stuff. And we grew up really close to Wroxeter Roman fort. And also we went to Chester quite a lot, where you could walk along the Roman walls, which is really cool. Also was really into history as a kid. And I remember a friend having a toga party for our seventh birthday party or something like that. But I never really, I liked history, but it never really captured me. And it was at sixth form when I studied classical civilizations, and it was basically all literature. And I was like, okay, this is my thing. This is what I'm interested in. But yeah, it was totally by chance that I even studied it, to be honest. I had my gap year between GCSE and A level, um, unintended. I started at school. I kind of thought that I wanted to be a fashion designer. So I've sort of almost come full circle, really. But my art teacher encouraged me to go to this college that was a 2 hour bus journey away from home. Yeah, because it had a really good art department, and they had a photography studio and dark room and really good graphics and stuff. So I was like, yeah, I'll go there. It'll be amazing. And then quickly realized that I can't handle getting up at 5:30 in the morning to get a 2 hour bus in the middle of the countryside. This bus was awful. It would literally stop every single village. There's two houses in the village, but it will stop there. I'm like, come on, guys, I've got places to be. So I quit after 6 weeks, didn't tell my parents, and was like, it'll be fine. I'll go to the sixth one that's, 10 minutes away from my house instead. But they told me that I was too late to kind of join that year, with all my friends from school. So I'd have to wait another year. So yeah, that's a kind of really roundabout way of saying that. And then, yeah, I didn't know what I wanted to do for A level. My granddad was like, do a language, do a science, do an essay-based subject. So I picked French, history, and maths, and then needed something to fill the last slot in my timetable. You did, I don't know if you still do it, but 4 AS levels in your first year, then drop down to 3. And my options were chemistry or classical civilizations. I had no idea. But then I went to the taster day, and the teacher, Sean Squire, big shout out. She is amazing. She was just so enthusiastic, and it seemed so fun. I think we talked about the Odyssey in the taster lesson. So, obviously I was sold. And yeah, she was just so enthusiastic and kind of vibrant and energetic. And she's got so much time for all her students that you could stay at lunchtime and just chat to her about whatever you wanted to. um yeah, and I thought, okay, I could do this. And then I realized that kind of in classics departments you have so many options. You could do the ancient history route, or the class civ route where it's all in English, or Greek and Latin. And I think was it, I was watching your other videos, and was it Flora who said that she liked the idea that classics, that you could study languages but you didn't have to speak them, and then it turned out that actually you do have to speak them sometimes. Same thing happened with me. I was really, really good at like the reading and writing in French, but the speaking did not like that. So I thought that would be a good option. And then, yeah, kind of through that really, um, fell into it almost by accident, but really enjoyed it.
So you said though there that you wanted to be a fashion designer. So is that then when, before we actually get to Plato's Fire, because I do want to focus on that, but just sort of that build up to where you are now, is that sort of coming full circle then? Were you conscious of going back to that sort of original plan?
Not consciously at all. But I've always like it's kind of weird for growing up in kind of the countryside. You know, there wasn't even a city in Shropshire growing up. Like we had to go to Birmingham if you wanted sort of decent shops and things like that. So it was really just kind of I was really into vintage clothing before that really was a thing, kind of out of necessity because it was raid my mum and my grand's wardrobe or don't have any clothes. Also, my granny was a tailor, so she taught me to sew when I was really little. I'd make like clothes for my Barbies and stuff like that. So it's kind of always the kind of creative, fashiony streak has always been there, but just sort of dormant for a really long time. A really long time.
So then what triggered Plato's Fire? Like what was that moment that you were like, "Ooh, I kind of want to go back and design and start this whole thing?"
I had another jewelry brand before Plato's Fire, but it was very much, it was less kind of creatively fulfilling. So it was more just something like a sort of side hustle, where I would like buy the charms and the chains and kind of assemble them and sell them on and things like that. And yeah, I just felt I think I started in 2016 doing that, 2015, and it was pretty unfulfilling. I wasn't feeling like I was being stretched creatively, like there wasn't really any creativity going into it. Um, and then lockdown happened, and I think like a lot of people, I sort of had the time to sort of really sit and think about where I was and where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. And um yeah, so I should say that after uni, I kind of turned my back on classics completely. I struggled quite a lot at uni. I found it really difficult and sold all the books that I could immediately after. But during lockdown, I started listening to like podcasts and radio more and Natalie Haynes' podcast.
What a gem. Obsessed.
And it was that kind of I was like, oh yeah, this is fun. Like this doesn't have to be really difficult. I don't have to be crying over like conjugations all the time. I can actually just enjoy these stories because like you know, they can be harrowing, they can be brutal, they can make you cry, but they can also just be so much fun. Like there's so much life in them. And then I kind of picked up my Greek books again. Well, I bought new ones because I'd sold them. And started kind of teaching myself Greek again and enjoyed it a lot more, going at like this slow pace. And I think I was looking at the sort of so I'm friends with my old classics teacher on Facebook with Sean, and I'd seen her post something about how like with the A level changes, the course was like much more diverse. So when I studied, it was all literature. That's all we did, and now I think there's sort of history and art in there as well. So I was kind of like, oh, what did I miss? So I looked back at kind of like I got like a sort of on Amazon preview of the textbooks, and I saw this kind of like a Greek art one for A level. Um, so I was like, oh, that's really interesting, and I got one of the books. I still got it. It was the green Susan Woodford one, the Introduction to Greek Art, which is like an iconic textbook. And I was looking at all the pots, and I was like, oh, I kind of wish that I got to do some of this, at school or at uni. And then I was like, these would make really good earrings. And it started from that, really. I spent like 2 years drawing ideas and working out how to actually get them from paper and into acrylic because all my jewelry is laser cut. And it was all new skills that I'd never used before. So yeah, it was a good way to spend lockdown.
So take me through that process then, from designing, from figuring out what you want it to be, to then, obviously there are multiple steps in between this, but then having them laser cut and then putting them on the website. Like, what does that whole process look like, and how long is that process?
It's pretty long. So the first collection, my Greek vases, took pretty much that whole 2 year period of sort of learning how to do it and making a lot of mistakes. So the machinery is quite big. Laser cutters are pretty big, and you can't have them in a kind of domestic setting. They use like there's lots of fumes. You have like like the thing that you get with a tumble dryer where it like sticks. It's kind of like that, but on a much bigger scale. So I have to send off my designs to someone else to get them cut. So that adds quite a lot to the process, especially when you're making mistakes because you wait a couple of weeks to get your designs back. You realize they're crap, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna have to do this again. But now I've got it down to about 3 months, and there's 3 months between each of my collections. So that gives me the time to kind of work it all out. So yeah, it starts with research, finding ideas, which usually happens on Pinterest or the museum websites. Like museum websites are amazing now. Like, you can just like search the full collection. It's great. Um, Going to museums as well always sparks something. Looking through books, looking through Instagram, just existing ideas happen. And then it's all about drawing them out. I'm not very good at kind of visualizing stuff when it's flat. So I like to kind of draw ideas and then cut them out and like hold them up to my ears and like, yeah, that works, or no, that really doesn't work. And then it's kind of converting paper drawings to vectors, which is the file format that you need to send to the laser cutter. So I do that on my iPad because it's basically just like drawing on paper. I have like like an Apple Pencil, and it's much more straightforward for my technologically unminded brain. Then that gets sent to my laser cutter. They send me the pieces, and they're literally just see if I've got any pieces. So like my octopus earrings kind of come like this and like this. And this is quite a sort of simple one. So then I just have to glue them together with like a wood backing to hold it. But then some pieces have got like a lot more tiny pieces involved in them. And then I have to glue it all together. And that cures for 48 hours. So even the making process, it's quite a long time. Yeah. Um, yeah, and then photograph them, put them online, hope someone buys them.
I didn't realize, and I know this sounds so silly, but I didn't realize until you just showed them that they are all separate pieces that you've then got to stick together.
Yeah.
Like, my goodness, what a labor of love that goes into all of these
It
collections.
it is. And yeah, the worst thing about the kind of the acrylic and the laser cutting is that you can kind of see they have this sort of protective backing on. So you can kind of peel it off like that. It's to protect it when you're gluing it. But sometimes, especially with the mirrored stuff, the shiny stuff, it has scratches, and you don't notice until you peel it off and you finish, and you're like, I just spent 2 days making this, waiting for it, and it's got a scratch on it.
So then you literally can't sell that then?
No, so I run a sample sale twice a year, and I just kind of really heavily discount them and put them in that, because otherwise I just have stacks of like poor scratched octopuses with no homes to go to.
That's a really good idea, though. It's a very like outletty kind of idea of just like, here are all the ones that didn't necessarily work but are exactly the same as all the others if you don't mind.
Yeah, and quite often like the scratch you can't even notice when you're wearing them. So it's good. It's good. I know that my pieces can be quite expensive just because of all the labor that goes into them. So having them on discount, it's just a fun way of making them more accessible, I guess.
So the name Plato's Fire, though, where does that come from?
I knew you were going to ask this. So I hate philosophy.
Oh God, okay.
I'm just going to put that out there. I do not like Plato, but so when I was like looking for a name, like names are so difficult, and I knew that I wanted something that kind of was classics related to kind of position myself so that people knew immediately what it was going to be. But I didn't want it to be like really obvious. Um, and then I found this book of, so I'm really into like words and kind of dialect words and different British languages. My father-in-law is a Scots poet. So we kind of like talk quite a lot about words and how words change. And I found this book that was like a collection of British dialect words for kind of the landscape and weather and the environment and stuff. And it was like different counties, even different towns have different specific words for, like natural phenomena. And there was Plato's fire. It was somewhere in the south of England, and it means the kind of dappled light that you get in a forest, and the way that the light plays on kind of bark and like fallen trees and the leaves and stuff. And I was like, that's so beautiful. And it kind of recalls the cave, Plato's cave, the shadows on the wall and what's real and what isn't real. And I was like, that actually fits really well with what I'm doing because I'm basically recreating ancient artifacts, and it's a simulacrum of a real pot. It's a pot that you can wear, and it sort of all fits in. But I just really loved that, the light dappling in a forest, and every time I see that now, I'm like, this Plato's fire.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, so it came really quickly, and I made a list of like 5 different names. I can't even remember the other options, but I was like, it's that, and it's going to be that. Yeah, so it happened quite quick.
So, as you were talking, I'm just thinking, which is sort of a little bit of a digression, but what is your hardest piece? Sort of going back to us talking about like laser cutting and scratching and everything, I was just like, what is the most difficult one that you have, whether to assemble or the design process?
The octopus took a lot. It took quite a few rounds of sampling just because I don't know if I've got. Let's see if I've got a one made. Here we go. So yeah, you can kind of see it better there. His little legs. Do you call them legs in an octopus?
Tentacles.
Tentacles. That's the word. His arms and his legs. They're quite thin. So the first few times it was too thin and they would snap really easily before I could even assemble it. So that took a few rounds of sampling, and even just to draw it initially, it's like it's got different layers that you can. I don't know if you can see the layers where his tentacles cross over. So that took a really long time just to draw it and then to kind of get it to work. And also the pot, because it's almost completely spherical, to kind of get it to the right shape where you could see the octopus and not have it constantly bash against your head because it's quite round.
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah. So that's where my kind of like drawing it on paper and holding it up really helps because I get rid of that issue. But I think my next collection is definitely going to be the most complicated. I've just sent off the initial designs to be sampled. So it's kind of based on literature this time. So I've got kind of stacks of books, and the idea is to have like the authors written on the spines or like different titles of ancient texts written on, and then also an open book design that would actually have the Greek text on one side and the English on the other, or like the Latin and the English. So like the opening lines or like just favorite quotes and stuff. But that's a lot more, like the pieces are a lot smaller in that because I've got different colors of books stacked on top of each other. But I'm also really excited. One of my laser cutters has got this thing called a UV printer, and it seems to be able to print anything on anything. So she posted about it on Instagram, and my mind was immediately like, oh my God, I can make so many things with this. So I'm hoping that I can get really, really tiny text printed onto like kind of cream colored acrylic to look like pages of a book. But we'll see what happens when they come back. It might not work at all.
That's so cool though. Like the fact that your brain also works that way, like you see one thing advertised on Instagram, you're like, oh my goodness, I could do this with it. Like that's just such a special way that your brain works in order to be able to do that. Like, do you realize how creative you have to be to think that way?
No, no. It's kind of annoying to be honest, because I see something and I'm like, oh, I could do that. And it's like, no, I don't have time to do all these things. Yeah, it's sort of that creativity breeds creativity thing. Like you get one idea, then the next day you've got 7 and you don't know what to do with them all. Yeah. But I'm excited to see what happens with this. I think it could be good fun.
So, like, what do you envision for Plato's Fire then? Like, if you're looking 5 or 10 years in the future, no pressure, but like, where do you see it going, or what are your hopes for or dreams for it?
Pessimistically that I'm still going. That people still want to buy it. Like haven't reached like peak saturation for people wanting pot jewelry. Um, but I mean, ideally, stocked in the British Museum would be pretty cool. Um, maybe like designing an exclusive collection for a big museum would be very cool. The V&A would be amazing.
The V&A would be a great fit, actually.
Yeah, but yeah, that's pipe dream stuff.
So, along with all the jewellery stuff, you also post about your read alongs, your readathons, all of this. I would love to talk to you more about those. Is that because you want to read those books and you want people to read along with you? Or is it tapping back into that, that person who first discovered the classics or who really struggled with philosophy and going back to that person? Like, where did those come from?
All of that, really. So, the first one I did last year was the Odyssey, and I think I'd finished like Emily Wilson's Odyssey for maybe like the second or third time. It's one that I reread every year, and I loved it. And I think it was there's always this kind of misconception that classics is really difficult in English as well. Like obviously the languages are difficult and there are things that people personally find difficult, like me and philosophy just do not mesh at all. But when you get a translation like Emily Wilson's, like it's so fun, it's so easy to read, it's exciting, like it's at its heart, it's like an adventure story. And it's the stories that we like so many of us grew up reading, the Cyclops and all this monsters and adventure. And I was like, it's not like you can read it, it's fine. Like if you can manage, I don't know, like the latest Colleen Hoover book, you can definitely manage this. Like it's not some high elite book. It's just silly stories. So I kind of wanted to encourage people to approach it in that way rather than, sometimes I this is what I get with philosophy. You get this mental block where you're like, I can't do this, I can't read this. This is going to be really difficult. And then it almost makes it too difficult to read. But if you want to approach it in a way that's like fun, and I think reading it in a group setting as well makes it more fun because it kind of takes the pressure off a bit, and you can kind of just send memes at each other or just be like, I screamed about this page, I can't believe this happened. Like I think it was maybe the fourth time I'd read the Odyssey when I kind of really realized the bit um where Menelaus is like talking about the story of how he dresses up as a seal, and you're like, what the fuck.
I had the same thing. I had the exact same thing when I reread it last year. And like I had remembered it, but I had just sort of pushed it into some weird corner of my mind. And when I reread that part, I was like, what the hell is going on? And why is no one questioning the seal thing? That to me was the most shocking thing, that no other character in the story is like, oh, that's a really weird story, man. It's like,
Oh yeah, no, yeah, makes sense, makes sense. I do the same thing all the time. And I think it's one of these things where when you're reading it in an academic setting, that kind of goes over your head because you're too busy like looking out for metaphors and like how much of a dick is Odysseus being and stuff like that, that you kind of miss all the humor. And there's also my favorite simile is the one where it's talking about him tossing and turning like a sausage on the spit. Now every time I can't sleep, I'm like, oh, I'm like a sausage. Wow, weird simile.
I'm now just like picturing you just like lying by yourself, just like, oh, I'm like a sausage.
That's what Odysseus was doing. He was just lying there like, I'm a sausage. Everyone always goes on about Homer being like the master of metaphor. And then I'm like, sausage. Is it a sausage or is it a doner kebab?
We gotta get really specific about the kind of meat we're talking about, guys.
You like, you on a late night walking past a takeaway, there's Odysseus spinning slowly in the window. Got really off track now. But yeah, it was just the fun of it. I wanted people to see how fun it could be. Also kind of I am involved quite heavily in like fandom and fan fiction and stuff. And I've always really enjoyed when we do read alongs and group reads in fandom and all kind of getting excited about the same story at the same time. I think there's something really powerful in the kind of the community aspect. And with classics, this is how the Odyssey, the Iliad, was meant to be read in a group setting, all kind of reacting to the same things at the same time, and kind of that, I guess, like group catharsis sort of feeling that you get from it, I think is really important. Also, reading stuff on your own can get really boring. It's reading can be a lonely hobby. I think it's fun to talk about it, and you understand it more as well if you talk about it.
Absolutely. I think, like, especially speaking from like my point of view where I do like my summaries, that like what really helps me is like before doing that, I'll talk to, so my younger brother studied classics as well. So maybe I'll talk to him or I'll talk to one of my friends or something just about the chapter casually. Like, I'm not like, let's schedule in a call, just because I want to see like what they remember, and I want to see like, what they took from that chapter, what they took from that moment. Because it is a case of like when you're reading by yourself, it is lonely and you focus on one thing and somebody else will be like, well, what about this character that did this? And you're like, oh my God, that did happen, didn't it? Like, how did I miss that kind of thing?
Yeah, and I think when these texts are so dense, and there are so many characters, I think I get that a lot in the Iliad because there's just so much going on constantly, and you're like, wait, who did what? Did that really? And yeah, I just it is that thing where people do hone in on different aspects of the text, and it is almost like going back to the classroom. Like at A level, like Sean was really good at kind of collaborative reading, so kind of like open discussions about what we liked, what we didn't like, and it's kind of almost like a reading group, and it's sort of just bringing that back online and enjoying it.
And now you're doing Ovid, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm like, shouldn't have done this. It's massive. Yeah, so I wanted to read Stephanie McCarthy's translation, and I've never read it kind of front to back before. I don't think I've ever read the full thing. At uni we kind of dipped in and out and did like specific scenes, and I think it is good in so I wanted to read it front to back, but I think it is a good thing because it is so episodic. Like if people want to skip certain stories, because they are heavy stories, a lot of them. If people want to skip for whatever reason, or they can't commit to doing the full 16 weeks, they can skip a bit, and it's not really like you're missing out. Like I think if you do read it all the way through, you will pick up on kind of callbacks and foreshadowing and things like that. But also you can just take a story for what it is and enjoy it just as that. Some of them are only 2 pages long, 1 page long. So I think it is a good way to kind of dip in and out if you've never read anything like this before. And hopefully we'll all get through it together. Try and remember who's who, when's when.
With your reading group, so for anybody listening that was like, oh, actually, I really want to, join one of those, what is the reading process like? Like, are you, sort of doing each, I don't know, a certain amount of stories for Ovid, let's say, like every week, or is it every month, or?
It's one book a week. So easy to remember. One book, 1 week. And the kind of aim is to read it kind of through the week and then congregate on a Sunday to talk about it. And I found that so last year with the Odyssey, that was the first one, and I would literally just be almost live tweeting my thoughts on it. And I think I got a bit excitable at points and then a bit less excitable at other points, depending on how big a weekend I'd had. So I'm trying to be more organized this time round, and I'm putting together a little, almost like a little resource pack for each week. So it will have a sort of summary of the book, the stories within the book that we've read that week, and then a deep dive into one particular story that I've really enjoyed, or not enjoyed but found really interesting. You know what I mean? I don't know if you can really enjoy some of these stories. And then kind of a section of kind of further reading or watching or viewing and stuff. So kind of Greek text that Ovid has based his work on, or that he is referencing, or that have similar themes. to what we find in the Metamorphoses videos like that you do that are kind of expand on it, help you to understand it a bit more, the summaries or deep dives into specific myths, and then also um, kind of theatre productions or more visual things. Um, there's quite a lot of stuff on the National Gallery's YouTube page, Titian paintings, because he draws a lot from the Metamorphoses. So there's quite a few like curator talks that I've found really interesting. So I put links to them. So kind of just widening it so it's not all reading. Or if people like a specific story, then they'll be able to kind of explore that one further rather than just like sticking to rigidly reading this entire text sort of thing. Because I find that really helpful. Um, I think the cool thing about classics is that there's only a finite amount of stuff that you can read. So it's really exciting when you read a text and you know what it's referring to, and it's usually Homer. so, so if you read the Odyssey and the Iliad, you're pretty much set. But like there's bits in Ovid where I'm like, oh yeah, I know what he's talking about there. I know what this is a reference to, and that's really exciting, I think.
It literally sounds like you have just started your own school, just so that you know. Like, not in a bad way, in like an amazing way. The fact that you're doing all of this work for people to read along with you and to inspire people to go outside of that and link them to things and encourage them, like, this is an amazing feat.
Yeah, I don't really want to. It's low key. It's not. I'm not.
It's in the way that Moan is a school. Like, it's like, yeah, come and read with us. But like, you're doing way more work than I'm doing. Like, I just read it and I'm like, here's the summary. And then like oftentimes in my comments, people know this, sorry guys, I will be like, oh, this is too technical of a question, go read. I'm not answering that question. If it's not in the video, I'm not answering it. Whereas you're on the back of that being like, okay, great, you can read, but then here's everything else. Or like, here's a way to reintroduce that into everything, like the world again.
Yeah, I think it's stuff that I would seek out by myself, and I'm like, instead of just like hoarding it, I might as well show it to other people, and it is that collaborative thing, and I think it's probably going back to uni and like feeling quite alone studying, so it's more like kind of bringing people together because like I think I would have had a very different uni experience if like Instagram and Twitter had existed in the way that they do now. Like it's so easy to find a community now, and the classics community online has just been amazing. Almost from day one, everyone has been so supportive of what I'm doing and so excited, and everyone shares everything all the time, and it's just really nice. Unless there's drama. But it's like if I'd known that these people existed um when I was at uni, then I think it would have been better. So it's almost like giving that back in a way, and showing people that it can be fun. It can be not stressful and not hierarchical almost. Like it's we're all in it together. It's not yeah, I don't want it to be like I'm teaching you this. It's more like we're learning together and this is how it might help us.
Hey, that's exactly how like Plato, I know you don't like philosophy, but that's how Plato structured his school, right? Like he had his academy, which was come sit, chit chat, go off and do your own thing. Like that's exactly what it sounds like you're doing. Again, I'm sorry for referencing philosophy. I'm in the wrong audience, but still.
It's just that if it was Plato's Academy, I'd be stuck at the back being like, what did you say?
So then where are these reading groups done? Like where can people, I'm going to link everything in the description below so that you guys can obviously go and find it yourselves. But just, for you to explain, like where can people find those? How do they sign up? That sort of thing.
It's on Twitter, Instagram, and I'm going to do it on Tumblr this year as well. There's no sign up, it's just drop in, drop out. There's the hashtag metamorphoses read along, which is far too long to be a hashtag. I don't know what else to call it. And yeah, we're going to gather. So on a Sunday about noon, I'll kind of post the resources that I've gathered that week and kind of like leave a few discussion prompts, I think, for people to join in. But also, as you're reading, you can post with the hashtag and I'll see it and we'll chat. Yeah, so there's no strict timetable, but roughly one book a week, and we gather on the Sunday. But if you want to post earlier than that because something's really captured you, something that you're excited about, something you want to talk about, then you can do that earlier, and hopefully lots of people will join in. Like last time, it was good fun. It was really good fun.
So with your book readathons, though, do you plan to do different translations? If you pick one translation, you're reading from that. And then in the future, do you think, okay, when we get through a lot of these different texts, maybe we'll go back and do different translations? Or have you not even pictured how far ahead it's going to go?
I have not pictured that far ahead at all. So anyone can join in with any translation. I basically just picked what I want to read. So I really wanted to read MacArthur's translation, so that's one that I'm going to read. But if people can't get hold of that, they can just read whatever translation they want. And there's people reading it in different languages as well, which I think is going to be really cool to kind of try and compare um, how it kind of crosses over into different languages, and if there's any like weird quirks of that.
That would be so interesting.
Yeah, so I know someone who's reading it in Spanish, and I hope we're going to get some other languages as well, because that is also something that I brought over from fandom. So, um, reading a text in different languages and comparing different kind of cultural norms that sometimes come across in different languages is quite fascinating to me. So even just comparing different English translations is going to be quite interesting. I found that with Wilson's Odyssey, there's quite a lot of significant differences um, in the way that she approaches things that I think MacArthur does as well. Like I get the same vibe from it, which is why I'm really excited about it. So yeah, also because it only just came out, it's only out in hardback. It's quite expensive, so just beg, borrow, obtain the book, however you can get it. It doesn't matter what translation you read, really.
And I think as well, I don't know if, about Ovid's Metamorphoses, but for most of them, you guys can also find them on perseus.tufts.com.edu, even not .com. I don't know what's .com. Either way, it's perseus.tufts.edu. They always have the text that, even though, yeah, it's not ideal reading it online, it's still for free. If you guys are listening to this going, oh God, I just want a free copy and I want to join this, I will link Perseus in the description below as well, so you guys can just search that website and see what they have.
Poetry in translation is really good for Ovid as well. That's a good one. But also like your library. Go to the library. I'm a big advocate of the library. I got one of the e-cards during lockdown and just read so much. Also audiobooks. You can get audiobooks on your phone from the library for free. It's amazing.
You know, audiobooks, I think the other day I was seeing on Twitter, lots of people, I don't know why this came up on my Twitter, because now they have the For You page on Twitter instead of just the following one. And I was scrolling through that and I saw this huge discussion of people being like, audiobooks aren't real reading. Like, you need to really have the book in your hands. And I was just like, but that's historically not what even reading was. Like, to engage with these texts, it was to hear them. So get the audiobook if you like that better. There's no right or wrong way to read.
Yeah, no, for stuff like Homer, you want to hear it because that's the original experience. And like you wouldn't say that reading a bedtime story to a kid is not reading. And that's basically just an in-person audiobook, isn't it? No, that's stupid. Audiobooks are reading. It's reading.
So just checking the time now, Natasha. We should round this interview up to an end, sort of end this off for everybody. And the way I end all of these conversations, and the way I'm going to ask you to end it as well, is with a piece of advice for the audience. So if there's somebody who came to this and was thinking that they might want to start being really creative with the ancient world and didn't really know, not necessarily how to start, but maybe how to sort of push that out, right? How to get people's attentions with their creativity, with their designs, with their art, whatever it happens to be. What's the advice that you can give to that person?
Just start. Really, I think a lot of creative people have this perfectionist tendency, and it can be scary to put your work out there and not know how it's going to be received, especially if you feel that it's not ready, that you're not ready, but you will never be ready. you will never create something that you think is perfect. There will always be something like, oh, I wish I'd done that instead, or oh, I should change this, I should alter this. It will never ever be perfect. And I think the sooner you can get over that, the better. The sooner you can kind of start putting stuff out there and getting feedback is that is really important. It's I talked a lot about community, and it is finding that community is really important. The only way you'll do that is by putting yourself out there and just being vulnerable, being real, being authentic, and not in that sort of Instagram authenticity way. Like, just be you, and people will find you and they'll appreciate that, and then you can start from there. Like, if you get that down, I think that's good. I set up community in the sense of like kind of like the wider community is really important, but also like having people that really understand what you're doing is really important. So I set up a group chat. There's like 5 of us for classics. We called it Crib. It's classics related indie businesses. And we've just got a really low key WhatsApp group chat. And it's like any problem that we have, we can kind of be like, guys, have you dealt with this? Like, everyone gets, like a weird comment left on on your Instagram that you're like, I don't really know how to handle this, or like your wins, your losses, is this a bad idea? Kind of getting feedback and stuff, that is really important. So if you can find or make a group like that, that is huge. That is huge. Whatever stage of the kind of creative journey you're at, being able to kind of, it's like a safe space almost to sort of vent or to kind of ask for advice is good.
Okay, Natasha, that is actually such a great piece of advice. I am surprised that no one has said that prior to this. And I'm so glad that we could end on such a positive, community-oriented note. So thank you so much for having this chat with me. I hugely appreciate it. And as I say at the end of all of these videos, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for engaging and for enjoying these videos on the channel. Because obviously, the more views I get, the more people I can bring on, and the wider the community, the classics community, can get over here on Mona Inc. Now, it goes without saying that you can find all of Natasha's links in the description below. So do not forget to check out that box down there to find her Instagram, her Twitter, her website. Everything is all linked down there to make things as easy as possible. But thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll be seeing you next time with more videos here on Mona Inc. So I'll see you guys then.